What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we are finishing up our talks on the Oath of Glory Paladin, the show-off, the one that seeks all kinds of recognition for what he or she has done, and I think we're going to have a really good time. This is a unique way to take on this subclass, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun while we do it. Before we jump in though, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 5,000 by the end of this year. I think we can do it, but of course I need your help in order for us to get there. And of course, make sure you click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. So as we talked about on Tuesday, of course, if you have missed that video, that'll be up in the iCard above for you to check out, where we went into detail on what this subclass does well and doesn't do so well. But it's overall decent, right? It's not a bad subclass. It's not particularly amazing either, but with some interesting multi-classing, I think we can come up with a really cool flavor of character, as well as something that works really well mechanically as well. So that is what we seek to do. Before we jump into the build though, I do want to mention, of course, that an amazing thing that you can do to help support this channel and get something great in return is to join the channel down below. Of course, by clicking that button, you can join at the lowest tier, the bronze tier, and that will give you access to all of my build guides. So we have a typed up document for you that gives you something to follow along with the builds. Take that to your table, show it to your DM, whatever you want to do. And also you get all of my subclass fix guides as well. Those are also included for you. Also, all of my variety builds, those are included in there. All of that is there for you, and that is at the lowest tier possible. $2 a month. It's almost nothing, right? And yet you get all of that. I am working on filling out my backlog of those, and so new ones from old videos are coming out every week, which is great. And of course, every time that I upload a new video, that is accompanied on there as well for you. Of course, if you would like to join and be able to support the channel a little bit more, of course, very much appreciated. At the silver tier, of course, you get to watch these videos one day early, which is fantastic. And of course, you get a special shout out. So of course, thank you to all of my silver members and above. I am so appreciative for your support. It really helps me out in creating the content that I create. And finally, the gold tier. Currently, there is one perk in addition to everything below it, and that is priority picks on my variety builds. And of course, my variety builds can be anything. They're not tied to one specific class or subclass. And those are where we get kind of crazy in the theming and not so much worried about having X amount of levels in a class or subclass or whatever it is that we want to do that week. And you also get access to a specific part of the Discord as well, which is a lot of fun. And there will, of course, be some other things that come in the future for that. So now is a great time to jump in on the ground floor. So to wrap all that up, of course, thank you to all of you who are currently members, and I hope that all of you will at least consider becoming a member in the future. But if you don't, just being here is more than enough. So thank you for watching. Let's go ahead and jump into the build. So as always, we start out with our race. And again, I'm kind of on a kick here of not wanting to do custom lineage. I'm not wanting to do any kind of variant human. And really, it would kind of be optimal for this because I do need a lot of feats for this build, but I'm not doing it. I'm refusing to take one of those this week. I probably will at some point during the course of playing a paladin, but I really want to do something different this week. And doing something different, we are definitely doing. This week, we're going to go with a Minotaur. Minotaur, of course, is a very unique race that you don't really see a whole lot of. And especially as a paladin, you know, you think of them as like fighters, you think of them as barbarians, you think of them as the big, strong things running into battle. So it's not necessarily strange as a paladin, but definitely the aspect of having an oath to something is a little weird. But the thing about it is the Oath of Glory is technically not specifically tied to anything religious, right? It's just tied to being the best and making sure that you put on a show for everybody that can possibly see. And so for that, I think the Minotaur works just fine. And of course, we also get a lot of really good stuff out of this. Of course, we're going to be using the Monsters of the Multiverse version, so we do get +1 to 3 different stats, which is a really fantastic thing, especially for our modified standard array. great, which we will get to here in a minute. We of course get a 30-foot walk speed, very standard, but we also get horns that we can make attacks with, which is pretty cool. And we can of course make that whenever we make a goring rush, which allows us to dash for at least 20 feet and then make an attack as part of our bonus action. And then of course also when we make a melee attack as part of our action, we can then turn around as bonus action and push the target with our horns. And that's really where I'm looking this week, is we have a 10-foot push. Of course, it is based on a strength saving throw against our strength modifier, but our strength modifier is going to be pretty good on this build. We're not going to be worrying about any kind of hexblade anything here, so we are going to be focusing on making our strength good. So I think we're going to use this actually a decent amount, and that's going to be fantastic, and you'll see why that works out well for us here in just a minute. And of course we also get advantage on survival checks whenever we are tracking, which definitely can come up. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in the Minotaur kit that I really like, and I think it works great with the theme that we're going for here. Of course, for our stats, we are going to be using our modified standard array as always. Again, if you're using regular standard array, if you're using a point buy system, if you're using rolled stats, your stats will look different than mine, and that is okay. You'll just have to focus on whatever is the highest, start there and go in order and just adapt from there. ASIs are always going to be different because every table is different, so just adapt from there. And if you have any questions, leave me a comment down below. Of course, our top stat is going to go in our strength, followed by our charisma, then our constitution. After that, it's not as important, but I typically tend to go with wisdom next, and then dexterity, followed by intelligence. I would love to have our dexterity higher, but I just can't. I can't afford to. I need constitution more, especially since we are going to be focusing on concentrating certain types of spells as we go higher and higher level. There's one that we will definitely be concentrating on most of the time. And so having a good concentration check, a good constitution modifier is going to be crucial going forward here. For our equipment, we really don't need a whole lot. I'm just going to take a polearm here. I'll probably take a glaive, but we're not taking anything specific like the slasher feet or the piercer feet or anything like that. So we're not necessarily tied to anything. So if you would like to take a different type of polearm, feel free. It's not a big deal there. And of course, the best heavy armor that you can afford right now. And we will eventually work up to full plate once you have enough gold, which will probably be quite a while away once you get enough gold, just because it's very, very expensive. So let's jump in at level 1. At level 1, we are going to not start out as a paladin. Instead, we are going to start out as a fighter. Yes, they are somewhat similar in what they do at first level, but there is one big key difference. We already get all the armor, we get all the weapons, we get all of those things, but we don't get Constitution saving throw proficiencies if we are a paladin, whereas we do on the fighter. The big thing is we of course get access to haste once we get 3rd level paladin spells. Dropping concentration on that spell is incredibly detrimental, and I want to be able to pass as many of those checks as I possibly can. Of course, we could have taken Resilient Constitution at some point, but we do have an even number where we got the +1 in 3 different stats from our race. And so it would have just made our stats kind of awkward if we did that. So I think we're better off going with the level 1 in fighter, and then we will of course go to paladin after this. But as a fighter, we of course get a fighting style, and I would honestly probably go with superior technique and grab trip attack, just because that is free advantage. We are going to be in melee most of the time, and so this is going to give us free advantage, which means possibly a free crit, which means possibly, of course, a huge smite blown off into whatever it is that you are attacking. We, of course, also get second wind. We're probably not going to use this all that much just because its scaling isn't going to be very good, because we're not taking a lot of fighter levels on this build. So of course I would really only use this if you need to top yourself off, or if there's a little situation where you don't have anything to do on your bonus action, then maybe you can do this. But I definitely wouldn't rely on this for any kind of healing that you need in a crucial situation. At level 2, we are of course going to move over to Paladin, and we're going to be here for a little while. We need to pick up several things before we can consider looking at any other classes. And honestly, I think it's best for us to just rush to getting haste. I don't think that there's any reason to go with any other classes or anything else until we get access to our spell that we're going to be concentrating on most of the time. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to rush to Paladin 9. So at Paladin 1, we of course get Lay on Hands and Divine Sense, one of the best healing options in the game. And then of course Divine Sense of course can help you to see certain types of creatures around you, which can definitely be handy. At Paladin 2, we're going to get another fighting style. I probably would go with defense here. If you want to take the great weapon fighting style, you can, but I typically think that it's kind of bad compared to the other fighting styles. So I would rather just have a +1 to my AC than have an average of +1 to my damage. I don't know. I just don't think it's all that great. We of course also get spellcasting and divine smite. Everyone's here for the smites to deal extra damage. And for spells, of course, at first level, we're going to get guiding bolt and heroism for free. Guiding bolt gives us a really reliable ranged option. And so I think that it's really handy to have that on lock in case we can't close the distance. We also, of course, get things like Bless, Command, and of course, all of the Smite spells as well. And so I would consider taking all of those whenever you need them. At Paladin 3, we of course get our Channel Divinity, and we will of course go and get Guiding Bolt and Heroism at this point. And I think that our Channel Divinity options are kind of meh at this point. Inspiring Smite can be okay depending on what you roll, and it's okay at low level, but once you get to higher level, its scaling is really bad. And so I don't know how much I'm really going to rely on this. I'm probably going to use Harness Divine Power most of the time because that's more spell slots, more chances to possibly smite, or at least get off a crucial spell. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing like 90% of the time. So that's just me, but I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of the Channel Divinity features on this specific subclass. At Paladin 4, we of course are going to get our first ASI or feat, and I'm going to go with Great Weapon Master. We're of course using a two-handed weapon with our pole arm, and so we qualify for that there. And so we can take a -5 to hit and get a flat +10 to damage, which is a huge improvement to how much damage we are doing. This of course can be combined after we trip an enemy with trip attack, and that can of course lead to a massive hit, possibly even adding on to a crit, which can be incredibly useful as well. So I really like taking that here. At Paladin 5, we finally get extra attack, and it feels good to be able to deal a little bit more damage as we can now attack twice. It also helps us to combo into ourselves as we, of course, attack once and apply trip attack our second time and apply Great Weapon Master. And then if we want, as our bonus action, we don't have Polearm Master yet, so we don't have the ability to attack with the butt end of the weapon, but we can, as a bonus action, of course, attack with our horns and actually push them away from us, of course, pending a strength saving throw. Unfortunately, prone doesn't make a difference when it comes to strength saving throws, so that's not going to come into play at all. But it could be interesting to push them away from you, and they are still going to be prone, and then you back up and they might not be able to close the distance because they have to use so much movement in order to stand up. So I think that could be an interesting way to play this. And of course you can do that part, you can do the bonus action part as many times as you want. Of course, knocking prone is not going to be something you can do a bunch, but that could be interesting, right? In order to position things as well as you possibly can. And we'll talk a little bit more about some other things that we can do once we get a few more levels under our belts here. We also, of course, get second level spells here for Paladin. We get Enhanceability and Magic Weapon built in, which are both pretty good, honestly. Also, you can take Aid, Fine Steed, and Lesser Restoration. Those are all going to be really great options there. At Paladin 6, we're going to get Aura of Protection, which is going to give us help with our saving throws. Very crucial. It helps us, it helps our allies that are nearby. Definitely one of the best features in the game, especially for Paladin, but I mean for anybody really. And then we get Aura of Alacrity here, which is of course unique to our subclass. It helps us with our walking speed, which is interesting, but it's also a very small aura compared to all of the others when it comes to helping our friends. So now we basically have a 40-foot walking speed. And so that can definitely come into play. Closing the distance is huge for us, and 40 feet is definitely very helpful. And we're going to find even more ways to close the distance a little bit later, and you'll see what I mean by that. At Paladin 8, we are of course going to be getting another ASI or feat, and here's where we will take Polearm Master. Polearm Master, of course, is going to give us a bonus action attack with the butt end of our weapon, which is what we're going to be using a lot of the time. But I also really like it in combination with the horns. So we can, of course, like we said earlier, attack once with trip attack the second time with Great Weapon Master, and then we can use our horns to push them away from us. Well, then we back up. When they come to approach us, we then get an opportunity attack because of this when they enter our radius rather than only when they exit. So this gives us another entire attack that we can make on our turn, which is going to be really, really fantastic. And so I think the horns are actually going to be really, really effective. And I think they're definitely going to be worth using a lot, actually. So definitely take advantage of that strategy there. At Paladin 9, we finally get 3rd level Paladin spells. We get haste and protection from energy built in, and we also get blinding smite and revivify. From here on out, I probably wouldn't worry about taking other concentration spells because haste is just objectively the best thing that you can be possibly concentrating on. So that's what I would do for pretty much everything, and then take things that are either instantaneous or maybe it's a ritual or something like that outside of combat something. But basically in combat, it's going to be haste, and that's about it, because we of course get yet another attack in order to apply our Great Weapon Master to. There are just so many amazing parts of this. And we are of course going to make this even more amazing at this point with another multi-class. Yes, we're multi-classing again, and yes, it's late to be doing this. We're level 10 at this point, right? We're halfway through the levels. We are probably 80% through what most people would ever encounter in a D&D build. But assuming you're going to high level, I want to show you what I would do in this case. So this character as an Oath of Glory Paladin wants to put on a show, right? Wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to be the life of the party. And if that doesn't sound like a bard, then I don't know what does. And so we're going to actually take some bard levels on this paladin, and I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Number one, of course, multi-classing, it's easy. We just have our charisma is already where we need that to be, so we're good there. And it gives us some other crucial spells, which are not necessarily concentration. It gives us other healing options. It gives us some other things to do on our bonus action if we're not making an attack, which can be really good. But overall, I'm here for some subclass features, which we will get in just a second. At level 1, we of course get our spell casting and our bardic inspiration. Bardic inspiration is a great use of our bonus action. Even if it is only a d6, it's still going to be worth it just because of how versatile it is, especially once we reach level 2, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But for our cantrips, I would probably take things like Prestidigitation and Vicious Mockery. Vicious Mockery, of course, is just the way that you hurt people with Yo Mama jokes, and I think that that's absolutely fantastic. Of course, if you haven't seen my video talking about the Bard class in general, that will be up in the iCard above for you to check out. And then, of course, I'll have the specific subclass video when that comes up as well. At first level spells, Dissonant Whispers is actually really cool just because it will have the ability to make people run away. And of course, again, if they want to run back to you, then you take another opportunity attack. And so that all works out really well for you. Healing Word, of course, gives us a nice little pickup if we can't reach them to apply and lay on hands, but that is kind of optional. Silvery Barbs, of course, and Thunderwave are both really great options. I don't think I need to explain Silvery Barbs very much because everybody knows it's really good, but that's a way to get it really easily on this build, of course. At Bard 2, we are going to get Jack of all trades, which is pretty cool because if we didn't have proficiency with our athletics or acrobatics checks, this will, of course, add on to those when it comes to if you were to use your channel divinity on the paladin in order to gain advantage on those. This would help you out with those. This helps us out with a lot of things such as initiative or any other skill that we did not have proficiency with. This is going to give us half of our proficiency bonus. So that definitely helps our initiative, at least with us having a low dexterity. So I'm really happy about being able to pick something up like that. We also pick up Song of Rest at this point. So when we're on a short rest, We can help people to heal a little bit more if they choose to use their hit dice, which can be good. And Magical Inspiration, which is new from Tasha's, basically gives you more things to do with your Bardic Inspiration. So it allows it to heal or deal damage rather than only applying to d20 rolls. So that, of course, is also very, very good. Then at Bard 3, we get to finally choose our subclass, and I think it's pretty obvious what I'm going for. Well, I don't know. There are a couple of options that would work decently here, but I went with College of Swords. Now, I did dump on the College of Swords when I covered it initially, and I did do a fixed guide for it. That, of course, is up in the card above for you to check out. But we're going to be going with it as written, and honestly, it does provide us with enough to where I think it's okay. I think it works on this multi-class just fine how it is, and so we're going to be all right. We do get bonus proficiencies here, which don't make a difference because we are already proficient with all of this stuff. We get a fighting style, which also doesn't do anything for us because we're using a two-handed weapon. But we get our blade flourishes, and those are what are important to us here. The flourishes are basically like Battlemaster maneuvers, kind of, but they are unique, and I really feel like they work better for this kit than a lot of the Battlemaster maneuvers did. I think once I got trip attack, I think I'm okay. And so I'm going to go with the blade flourishes instead of taking more levels in fighter. So with these, we, of course, when we take our attack action, our walking speed increases again to another 10 feet. So we've already increased it by 10 feet. Now we're increasing it again to a total of 50 feet, which is huge, right? Being able to move that far on a turn means that we don't necessarily have to worry about using something like Find Steed, right? We are just really fast, even though we're wearing a really heavy armor. Doesn't matter. We are going to be faster than most other people on the party outside of maybe a monk or a rogue. So that's going to feel really, really good. So of course, if we use a weapon as part of an attack, we can expend a use of our Bardic Inspiration and then of course do one of three things. Our defensive flourish, of course, allows us to deal extra damage and add the number we rolled to our AC, which can be really, really good. That gives us kind of a Blade Singer light type of deal, which can be interesting. We get Slashing Flourish, which of course allows us to hit multiple creatures. You're probably not going to use that one nearly as much, at least in my opinion. I don't think that one's as good. Mobile Flourish, though, is actually interesting as well because it gives us another option to push an enemy. So we can use this if we wanted to make it as part of our attack, and if we don't necessarily want to use up our bonus action. If we want to do our bonus action, if we want to use it for something else like a healing word or whatever, then this gives us a push without necessarily having to use up that resource. So I think it's definitely worth considering. I would probably use Mobile Flourish the most, Defensive Flourish right after that, and then probably not use Slashing at all. But basically, we can, of course, deal a little bit of extra damage and push the target 5 feet away from us, plus the number of feet that we roll on the die, which is kind of funky, right? Because 5 plus, it could be 6 feet. And of course, if we're using a 5-foot grid, then how do you do that? It's a little funky how that works, but oh well. And then if you wanted to use your reaction, you could, of course, close the distance and walk up to that creature. That could be helpful if you're trying to get something away from your sorcerer, your wizard, your whatever. This can help you to get them out of melee so that they can run away. So I definitely think that there are uses for this, and it definitely will come up a decent amount, I would say. So it helps you to be the protector and to definitely tell people that they owe you a favor, which I think is pretty cool in how all this works. So I think the Blade Flourishes work out really, really well for us here. We also get second level Bard spells, and Mirror Image, Shatter, and Suggestion are all really good. Of course, Mirror Image is a nice defensive option. Shatter can be interesting. Enthrall is one that could be cool as well, but that's kind of a little more niche in my opinion. So that's kind of a take it or leave it one for me. Next up, we are finally going to get back to Fighter, actually, and grab Action Surge at Fighter 2. So Fighter 2, of course, is going to give us the ability to make an entire other action on our turn once per rest, which, of course, is going to be fantastic. We can use that to cast a spell. We can use that to make 2 attacks. We can use that to mix it up and do whatever we want. And, of course, that can be really, really helpful when we need it. I would probably most of the time use that to accentuate whenever we make a successful trip attack. I would probably attack then with Great Weapon Master, Action Surge, do it 2 more times, and then you can of course do the same thing if you wanted to for your bonus action attack. So that all works out really well. Then finally, we're going to get back to Paladin. Now that we have 5 levels left, we'll get back to Paladin and we will stay there the rest of the way. At Paladin 10, we're going to get Aura of Courage, which helps us against the Frightened condition, which is great. At Paladin 11, we get Improved Divine Smite, which gives us just extra damage for free, which I'm never going to turn down. At Paladin 12, we finally get an ASI feat, and I'm going to finally max out my strength because I never bothered doing that. So I'm going to take a +2 into my strength at that point. We are going to then at Paladin 13 get 4th level Paladin spells. I would take Compulsion and Freedom of Movement for free, and then we could possibly take Banishment if you're not wanting to use Haste at the time. Banishment definitely is a fantastic spell if you're not wanting to use Haste. Otherwise, I would probably just load up on some other lower level spells because there's not a ton of 4th level stuff that I really care about. So it is what it is. At Paladin 14, we get Cleansing Touch, which could be interesting. If there's a nasty spell that's affecting you, you could get rid of that. Something like Slow or something that's really detrimental. That could definitely be good. And then finally, at Paladin 15, we get Glorious Defense, which can allow us to buff the AC of nearby allies and also gives us another way to make an attack on our reaction. So for all of those reasons, it's pretty cool. And it's really the reason why we took a polearm in the first place, in order to extend that range, because whatever we're attacking does have to be within our attack radius, and this helps us out with that. So what do you think of our build today? I think it's different, but I really think that it's a lot of fun being able to take some Bard levels on a Paladin. It's not too crazy, but it is a little bit different for sure. And I think the flavor works out really, really well though. So yeah, let me know what you thought down in the comments below. And of course, before we go, we're going to go ahead and cover our honorable mentions here. And so I've got quite a few races that I went through before I landed on Minotaur. The first actually was a Centaur. I came really close to picking Centaur because we get the extra speed. We of course get the ability to be Fey, and so we're going to be immune to any of your hold persons, so that is also pretty good. There's just a lot of really cool stuff about Centaur that works really well here actually, so I definitely can see that one working well. The Leonin is also good for the bonus action fear effect. I like that one a lot too, plus the natural weapon in the claws. The Orc, of course, gives us extra survivability with Relentless Endurance, as well as a bonus action dash. But the Minotaur also gave us some stuff like that too, so I'm cool with sticking there. And then if you're going all the way to level 20, I would probably take the Bugbear. The Bugbear is really, really huge for giving us yet another 5 feet of reach in order to make sure that our Glorious Defense feature does go off successfully the most amount of times possible. For our feats that I also considered, Dual Wielder was one that I considered. I considered making this a dual wielding build if I didn't need to worry about maintaining a certain distance, or at least making it short enough. So that was one that was very close, and this build was originally a two-handed, two-weapon type of build, but we ended up changing that. And then Fey Touched, of course, is also good because that gives us access to Misty Step, and being able to get away from people and then catch them whenever they come back to enter your radius, of course, is a really, really great thing as well. And of course, you would get another great enchantment spell like Silvery Barbs if you didn't take any Bard levels. And then finally, of course, other classes that we could have multi-classed into, or subclasses. Of course, the Battlemaster Fighter is kind of the elephant in the room here. Of course, that would allow us to grab more of those Battlemaster maneuvers, and those could have been really good. Rune Knight, of course, also works well here, being able to grow. It, of course, helps us to be able to reach a little bit farther. So that's also good. Hexblade Warlock is, of course, going to be great. It didn't work all that well on this build just because we did rely on strength a decent amount. But if you wanted to take a different race that didn't rely on strength, then that's always going to be a good option. Of course, Sorcerer could be interesting here, and I really like Clockwork Soul. Clockwork Soul, of course, allows you to kind of control what happens around you in a slight way. And so I think that could be interesting in that you're really famous because everybody thinks you're just lucky, but you're actually able to kind of manipulate space and time a little bit. And so I think that could be an interesting story. And then finally, the Whispers Bard could have also been interesting. Valor was okay, but Whispers I think was a little bit more of a standout. The only thing about them is that you do need a little bit more investment into the class in order for it to be as useful as it could be. So unfortunately, I'm just not willing to take as many levels as what it really would require for it to be as effective as it needs to be. So that is our build. Of course, let me know down in the comments below what you thought. And next week, we're going to be covering the Oathbreaker, the one that is still a paladin, but maybe went down the wrong path. Maybe just no longer wants to do what it is that he or she set out to do. And it's not a phase, definitely not a phase at all. But we're going to be covering that just to see how well it does next week. I hope you all are looking forward to that. And of course, next week we will be seeing the return of the SSBA Wi-Fi Battle League. So be looking forward to that as well. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that. And until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.